In this video we're going to cover shaft angles, particularly shaft angles in the downswing and the different options that you have. Now this one, it's got a lot of different theories out there, and to be honest I don't think I've seen any one video that covers it adequately. So I'm going to run through the whole lot with you. Now first of all, you need to understand how the wrist can move in the backswing. There's three directions. They can either hinge up, they can hinge sideways, or you can twist. Now some people call sideways forearm rotation, which is fine, but to me that's a little bit confusing because you can rotate the forearm using the shoulder, and that's a whole different movement. So if you think of it more as the wrist, you could say it's forearm rotation, but if you think of it as being sideways wrist hinge, it just makes life easier. Now if you hinge your wrists to the side, the same as how much you wrist hinge them upwards, so you end up in this angle here. Remember seeing the old Faldo drill doing this. The problem is if you don't amend that, if you don't change that in the backswing, you're going to end up very flat. Okay, your shaft angle will pretty much match what it was at setup, but that's not necessarily ideal because as you start in the downswing and your hands start to make the way back down again, it can get steep. Now you'll see people do this drill and end up in a good position, but they're actually changing the shaft angle when they do that. When you do that drill, I'll go here. Now I'm actually sort of lowering my shoulder and angling my left hand underneath to hinge it upwards. But actually if I just really focus on my right hand keeping the same angle the whole way, and my right hand doesn't move, it goes flat. So you'll see this a lot, people encouraging this drill, but it's not really necessarily how it wants to go. It's actually more like this. It's about halfway, at 45-degree angle. Then the shaft comes up into a much better position. It's not so laid off. It's not across the line either. So that's the first thing. You want a full amount of hinge, hip wrist cock, if you want to call it that, or upward wrist hinge more accurately, I'd like to call it. Full amount of upward wrist hinge, but only half of the amount of laying off, and that gets you in a better position at the top. The problem with that is then you haven't got, you've cost yourself half of your sideways wrist hinge to hit the golf ball. So when does it happen? Does it happen at all? Well yes, it happens in the downswing. Just like when you swing a baseball bat. Same here, you only got half of your sideways wrist hinge to get you into the ideal position at the top. Then in the downswing you apply the other half. Okay, now we're in a laid off position so we can attack the inside of the golf ball. That's not necessarily ideal because it's happening during a dynamic part of the golf swing. That's why you'll see some players, some pros do have it very laid off and just hold it. I mean, John Rahm's a really good example of someone who gets full amount of hinge and just holds it to the top and then manages to hold it all the way down and through. It's fine, you can do that. But it's quite hard to do that, and it's really risky to coach that because you'll find most people end up just going straight down like this. They'll tug down on the grip. So a good way to look at this is the direction of your hand travel on the way down and the angle of the shaft. So if you're in a laid off position and your hands travel this way, the club head will tend to want to fall back into line with it. So that's a steepening of the shaft. If you're across the line and you're coming down this way, well the shaft will fall back because it will want to come into line with where you're pulling on it. Really simple. If you just hold it like this and then pull down, it will move in that direction to come back into line with where you're pulling. So ideally really, we want the shaft pointing somewhere just inside the golf ball, just so we can get the club head very slightly inside your hands, just so we can get very slight draw or encourage a little bit more rotation through so that we can get a nice consistent strike. But there is scope for that. There is some variation that you can do there. You could be more inside to get a bit of a draw, you could be a little bit less inside or on plane or even slightly over to encourage a fade. But what I wouldn't say is go over and then try to hit it straight, because that's tough, because if your club head is outside of your hands here on the way down and you want to try and hit that golf ball straight, well then you've got to really manipulate, almost stop your turn, stall your turn, throw your hands out to get the club head back in under this, and then you end up super steep. And I do see that quite a lot. People are over the top and they're trying to compensate later on. So make sure you're way under on the way down, because everything can come out to the golf ball from there. You're going to have lots of gains rather than going over the top and then trying to stall everything to bring it back into line. Now, in terms of pluses and minuses, being up here and being over here, or being in between. Now, if you want your shaft angle to match what it was at setup so you can keep it constant, as I say, there's big risks with that. The benefit is potentially there's less movement. You're on the exact same angle, you just hold it and go through. So potentially there's some consistency there that could be gained. The downside is it costs you power. Go the other side, where you're steep across the line and you're going to shallow it and even get to the inside here and through, is there's more shaft movement. There's more time to generate speed. The club head is travelling further, has more distance to build speed, so you can potentially gain distance. But with all those shaft angle changes, you might potentially lose consistency and accuracy. So as I always say, there is a trade-off. Which one do you rather have? So John Rahm's a very big guy, a big strong bloke, so he can be laid off and just hold it and through, boom, and still hits it out of sight. However, if you have low club head speed, that might not be the style of swing for you, because that's not going to be optimal for distance. However, if you want distance, you want to gain it, you don't hit it very far, maybe experiment with going across the line and see how you get on with it. See if you can utilise the extra club head movement, the extra time in the downswing to build up more speed. But as always, I like to go somewhere in between the two, point it somewhere in line with the ball. There's a little bit of shallowing going on, maybe a little bit steeper than the inside at the ball, that is. There's a little bit of shallowing going on, so you get the best of both worlds. There's a little bit of extra movement, there's a little bit of this, but not so much that it's hard to repeat.